I never planned to be in that alley. In fact, if you'd told me a week earlier that my feet would carry me there, heart pounding, hands shaking, I would have laughed and said, "You've got the wrong guy." But the thing about life is, it doesn't always ask your permission before throwing you into a moment that changes you forever. It was a crisp October evening in Chicago, the kind where the air carries the scent of roasted nuts from street vendors, and the sound of distant train brakes squealing against the rails. I'd just finished my shift at Garrison's Hardware, where I'd been working part-time since graduating high school. My boss, Mr. Keating, was one of those guys who thought a handshake should be firm enough to crush diamonds. "Lock the back door tight, Danny," he'd said as I left. "Last thing we need is some punk breaking in." I remember smiling, slipping my hands into my hoodie pocket, and starting the familiar walk home through the side streets. I always took that shortcut. It shaved 10 minutes off my trip, and kept me away from the noisy Friday night crowds near Clark Street. But that night, I made a choice that would stick with me forever. The alley was dimly lit, its cracked pavement slick from a light drizzle earlier in the evening. My sneakers squeaked softly with each step. I was halfway through when I heard it, a muffled thump. Then a quick shuffle of footsteps. I froze. You know how your brain runs through scenarios at lightning speed? Mine was throwing up images of stray cats, raccoons, maybe even a drunk guy looking for a place to crash. But then came another sound, a sharp, desperate voice. "Let me go." It was a woman's voice. The words sliced through the cold air like broken glass. Without thinking, I moved toward the sound. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it might crack a rib. I knew the smart thing would be to back away, call the cops and wait. But something deeper than thought was pulling me forward. Around the corner, a single flickering streetlight revealed two figures. One was a man, tall, wearing a dark jacket, face partially hidden by a hood. The other was a young woman, maybe mid-20s, struggling to pull her arm free from his grip. My voice came out before my brain caught up. "Hey, let her go." The man's head snapped toward me. His eyes, sharp, calculating, locked on mine. For a second, nobody moved. The only sound was the slow drip of water from a rusty fire escape above. "Walk away, kid," he said. His voice was low, dangerous. I should have. Every logical part of me screamed to listen. But something about the fear in the woman's eyes made my feet stay planted. "I'm not walking away," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Here's the thing. I'd never stood up to anyone before. Not like this. Sure, I'd broken up arguments at school, but this was different. This was the first time I felt that line in the sand, the one between bystander and participant. The man tightened his grip on the woman's arm. "Last warning." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. My phone was in my pocket, but I knew the second I reached for it, he might do something worse. So I did the only thing I could think of. I took a step closer. "Let her go," I repeated, louder this time. My voice echoed off the brick walls. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of doubt, maybe surprise. He released her arm, but didn't move away. She stumbled back toward me, breathing hard. "You okay?" I asked her quietly. She nodded, still clutching her bag. "Yeah, thank you." The man muttered something under his breath, then turned and walked quickly toward the far end of the alley. For a long moment, we just stood there, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on us. You didn't have to do that," she said finally. "Yeah, I did," I replied. And I meant it. We walked to the main street together. She told me her name was Emily, and that she'd been on her way home from the bus stop when the guy had grabbed her. She didn't want to go to the police. Too much hassle, she said, but she thanked me again before heading off in the opposite direction. I stood there for a while, watching the city lights blur in the distance. My hands were still trembling, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from the realization that I had just done something I'd never done before. That night taught me something that's hard to put into words. You grow up thinking courage is this huge cinematic thing, slow motion scenes, dramatic music, a crowd cheering. But it's not. Sometimes it's just you, your pounding heartbeat, and a choice you have to make in a split second. And sometimes that choice changes you. I've walked past that alley dozens of times since. It still smells faintly of damp concrete and street vendor coffee, still has that flickering light. But now, every time I see it, I remember the night I learned that courage isn't about not being afraid, It's about moving forward anyway. And that was my first time.